Hello and welcome to the Cup of Tri Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, oxygenaddict.com and fueledbycake.com. Helen, how on earth are you today?
Rob, I'm fine. It's been one of those weeks where, sometimes we say life gets in the way. Well, it's definitely been one of them. So I can't even fill you in with fun stories of being out on my bike or anything because I was working over the weekend.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
What a shame. It's not good, is it, to have to work too much?
It's rubbish. But never mind. It's now done. And we get today off and then back in work. So, hey, it's fine. It's got to be done, hasn't it? The bills have to be paid. So, I can't fill you in on fun runs up mountains or anything like that because it hasn't happened.
Hey, I can. I've been out on my bike twice and I've swum in the last 24 hours. How good am I? I've done it. I'm back in training, Helen.
Wow. Is there anything, are you aiming for something? Because, wow, that's crazy.
I'm aiming to not be a fat git. That's what I'm aiming for. You got to take your windows where you get them. And if they come 3 in 24 hours, you've got to take them.
Hey, no, I noticed it was quite sunny, wasn't it, on Sunday? So that was a bit of fair weather training, I reckon, Rob.
To be fair to me, I was out in the morning before it brightened up. Oh. I was out when it was still raining.
Well done you.
I went out for an easy ride, and after half an hour I bumped into Tom Hardman in Knutsford, and he's like, "Oh, I'll come on the ride alongside next to you." And he's just come back from riding for like 20 odd hours across the Alps. So he was super fit, and I got crushed. It was, when you're riding tempo to just stay next to somebody, and he's chatting away, and I'm going, "Oh my God, I'm going to die here."
You should get out on your bike more often, Rob.
Yes, I should. I'm going to go out again later today.
Oh wow. Stop it. Yeah. Stop it. It's clearly something wrong.
I'm unemployed. That's what it is.
Do what I do. Go to work at the weekend.
I no longer have to labour as a teacher. So this is a perfect plug right here, isn't it? If anybody's thinking about needing a triathlon coach for the coming season, we both happen to know one, Helen, don't we, whose schedule just got freed up for the next 20 years or so. So having gone from having a chock-a-block coaching schedule, I now all of a sudden have a lot more capacity to coach people because I no longer teach at that place.
You say it with such joy in your voice.
Well, I realised the other day, we managed to keep the worst of the details of my teaching job off air, didn't we? We managed to do it all. You were like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Oh man, let me tell you what happened today."
Maybe we leave it that way.
Yeah, maybe we do. Yeah. Maybe the facts come out over time. But I'm a free man. Yahoo!
Wow.
So if anybody wonders what that noise is in the back of the podcast, that's the noise of me jumping out of a perfectly good aeroplane, as they say on Point Break. Me whistling, free-falling through space toward an uncertain future.
Hey, it'll be a future full of excitement and opportunities. These things happen.
Do you know what is great about this? You go, it's going to be sunny this weekend. We're going to load up the camper van and we're going to go away for a couple of days.
Perfect.
And I can do my coaching work over the phone and over Skype from a little beach in North Wales, and it's looking like a cool decision.
Good. I like that.
We can't afford to actually put petrol in the camper van.
You won't be coming home, but yeah.
But it'll get there, I'm sure.
Oh.
Right, now then, come on, let's go over the weekend's results. The big race from this weekend, from our point of view anyway, I think has got to be Norseman. Helen, if this isn't on your list, I don't know what is.
Well, it's up there. It is most definitely up there.
This would be the perfect race for you, wouldn't it?
I'm tempted more by Swissman.
Now, what is it makes you go for Swissman, which is amazingly beautiful, over the classic Norseman?
Because I lived in Switzerland and I love the country. That's essentially it.
Fair play. Yeah, fair play.
And it just looks like an adventure through Switzerland. It's that long and that mad. And you go up the end, it ends up the Jungfraujoch, which I've skied near at one weekend when I was out there. And you just sort of think, wow, that would be quite cool to get there on your own steam rather than a train.
It would be, wouldn't it? Definitely.
That's why. But no, I have heard amazing things about Norseman, and a couple of friends have done it, and they have just spoken so highly of it. I mean, it's the original, I want to say ridiculously hard, incredible triathlon, isn't it? the original one, which takes you
It,
way
it
out
is
of your
the original
comfort
one
zone.
where they went, well, you thought Ironman was
Yeah.
hard? Let's make it really, really difficult. So give us the heads up over the full course for people who don't know what Norseman is.
So it starts off in a fjord, and this year the swim was actually reduced to 1.9k because I think it was the first time in the race's history that they've had to do that. But it's because it was so cold, and I was reading somewhere it was around like 50 degrees, so that would be
It's like
around
10 degrees
10 or
water.
11. So it's already going to be a cold event, isn't it?
That's so cold you wouldn't be allowed to hold any kind of triathlon over
No,
here.
no.
I think if it's under 12, you're not even allowed to do a 400-meter open water swim in this country. So that's chuffing cold.
Yeah, really, really, really cold. Um, so yeah, they didn't go out as far on the ferry. So you start this thing on a ferry, which sort of takes you out to the middle of the fjord, and essentially you swim back to shore. But this year they didn't go as far, and obviously everyone kind of dived into the water, and then they have to swim back. But oh my goodness, that sounds really, really cold. And they were saying that
Doesn't
there
it?
was snow out on some sections of the course. That's how cold we're
Yeah,
talking.
you
And
can see snow in the background in the finishers
yeah,
photos here,
yeah,
actually.
and it's not like you. I don't know. Okay, you could do some triathlons perhaps in the middle of May or something, and there might be a tiny bit of snow on the ground, but that would be a shorter triathlon. This, you're talking like racing, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, 16 hours.
Yeah,
Oh, in those kind of temperatures, that is chilly, isn't it?
unbelievable. So it's pretty much off a ferry to the
Yeah,
shore. Then you ride, I think the ride's 180k again. It was 200k for a couple of years, wasn't it, when they tried to move the swim to make it a little bit warmer. And then, as if that isn't enough, riding up a mountain, you get off your bike at the top of the mountain, then you run up a massive, great big ski resort mountain.
yeah, yeah, and it finishes at the top of the mountain, and I'm sure there's a cut off. I don't know if it's some way up the mountain, and essentially, if you've got to that point, then you can carry on and try and get to the
And
top.
finish on the summit.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
isn't it the black T-shirt that you want to try to get at the top? And if you don't quite get that, then well, yeah, you don't get your black Northman T-shirt. But
Is that the deal then? You get I know you get the black Norseman T-shirt,
yeah,
but you only get that if you're one of the ones who gets to go all the way to the top of the mountain.
I'm pretty sure that's what I
I
heard from
think if
my
you miss the
friend. Yeah,
cut-off, they let you do more of the run, but you have to stay at like it's not sea level, but it's lower down, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
it just, I mean, the photos at the end, the finish photos, it looks so incredibly steep, and to get up to the top, and the people who are at the sort of station at the top are just all there in hats and really thick down jackets, and then you've got this guy in a really skinny tri-suit, and you're thinking,
Yeah, it looks
wow,
freezing, doesn't it?
yeah, he must be cold. So it was won by it was actually three Norwegians. So on their home turf, they took Alan Hovde got the win in 9 hours and 43, which again for such a tough course, that is.
Even if you had half an hour
Yeah,
on,
exactly.
with the fact the swim was only half
Yep.
distance, that is still like a 10-15 Ironman,
Yeah.
where most of the bike is uphill and all of the run is up a blooming mountain. That's fair play.
Yeah. So the Norwegians were top three, and Graham Stewart of Great Britain, of Scotland actually,
Yeah.
finished in just over 10 hours. He did 10:04, so he was 10 minutes off the podium. And he's been in touch with us, hasn't he, Rob, on @CupOfTry on Twitter?
Yeah, let's have a look. What have you got his thing there that he said to us? I'm trying to scroll through mine, trying to find it now.
Yeah, I have got it.
Here he is.
Have you got it?
NX Try was on the rivet from start to end. Leg breaking, heart breaking, on another level of pain, but spiritual and intimate. Oh, I like the. Now there's a race report in 114 characters, isn't it?
Exactly, and he said that he would recommend it, but he said you have to be ready because it's the hardest, coldest, windiest, but most beautiful and challenging race. And then
He's a former winner, isn't he? He won X Try in Scotland.
Keltman.
Keltman.
Yeah.
He won that either last year or the year before. So he's got the pedigree for these crazy wild races, hasn't he?
Yeah. Wow. It says that
Good lad.
it went down to 0 degrees on some parts of the bike course. Oh, that is.
Ideal.
See, I would struggle a little bit with the cold.
Would you rather race there in the cold, wrapped up, or in Hawaii in the heat and humidity?
That's a good question, actually.
We're more suited to race in the cold, aren't we?
Yep.
We could get wrapped up and deal with the cold. I think
Yeah.
we'd both melt in the heat of Hawaii.
This is it. I probably would melt. I would be fairly rubbish. I guess I've never really raced in extreme heat. Not like the humidity of Hawaii. I did a disastrous 10K once in Mexico and thought I was actually going to die and came last and had to be rescued by someone from I was on a basketball team, which is hilarious. People
So you were doing it on a
No,
basketball.
I was on a basketball team, and I am really not the tallest of people, so the fact that I played basketball is just hilarious. But one of the guys saw me and was like, "Helen, what's up?" Because I think I was walking. I was just like, I can't
You were
run.
out
I
of it, were
literally,
you?
I can't run. So he went and got me water.
Bless.
So no, I think I would be rubbish in the heat. Probably better, maybe in cold, but I have very bad circulation, so my hands.
Oh,
I
you
would
wouldn't warm up, eh?
Yeah, so I'd have to have hand
Yeah.
warmers. But anyway, someone else who did it was Chris Sterling, and he just says, "Unreal adventure sums it up for me," and a big smiley face. Love Norway. Simple.
Nice. Oh well, that's really cool. That's
And he sent us a picture as
uh,
well. So if you go onto the Twitter feed at Cup of Try, you can see a photo from Chris Sterling, and it just looks
looks
awesome.
amazing,
There's a
doesn't it?
tiny cyclist at the bottom of this picture with huge landscape of like the most peaceful lake and mountains behind. It's really, really beautiful. So I
It
think,
is gorgeous, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, I have.
Get on Twitter at Cup of Try and have a look at the feed there. Oh, we've had another one from Grain Stewart just come through. He says, gutted the swim was shortened. It changed my race completely because he's a super swimmer, of course. It was quite cold, but not for the Scots. God bless him.
That's brilliant.
Oh, man.
Uh,
We've also had a tweet through. Something else was going on this weekend that we've forgotten about because we're Northerners, was the Ride London.
yes.
And Gary.S, Cycling Boy London, says, Ride London for the first time. Crazy pace lines and chain gangs for 100 miles. And he has done 100 miles in 4 hours 20, according to his Strava picture he sent through. So that's going some, isn't it?
That's really good. I did the first Ride London, and my brother dragged me around, and I think we did it in just over. I think we did about 5 hours 10 or something. It was good. It didn't quite have the same atmosphere as the London Marathon because, well, the marathon course is obviously only 26.2 miles, and so you can get a lot more people, whereas over a 100-mile bike course, it's difficult to get all the supporters. And certain towns really, really went for it and had bunting up everywhere, and
Awesome.
yeah, and that bit was really good. But then other places, it was just, there wasn't that much support. But I think it's a great event, and it's a fantastic way to get, it's like to give people a goal, isn't it? Like the marathon.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
yeah. And
it's
I think
something
it's
to
one of
aim
those things
for.
that's going to grow and grow. It's already
Totally.
big in terms of numbers,
Yeah.
and they've raised 10, 12 million pounds a year for charity. So that's awesome in
Yeah.
itself. But I think it's going to grow and grow. And like you say, if you can turn that into a big festival thing,
Yeah. Which they do because they
then
have the elite race afterwards. They have the women's um, crit race, don't they? They had a Brompton race
yeah,
this year. They have kids races. So there is something for, yeah, something
fantastic.
for everyone. And it's quite cool because you start out um, over by the Olympic Stadium, and because all the roads are closed, it's just bizarre. You can cycle down these main roads in London with no traffic on them at sort of 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning, one day in August, and yeah, it's that bit of
Does
it
sound
is
does
quite
sound
cool.
pretty awesome,
Yeah,
actually. It really does sound
going
pretty
up some of the
awesome.
hills with so many people, like if you get stuck a bit, towards the back, that was quite problematic because if you've got people who aren't very good at riding up hills around you and then panicking and wobbling and maybe just deciding to stop halfway up, then it makes it harder
Yeah.
to keep going. And yeah, that was a bit annoying, but yeah, it's a good event.
Good stuff. Right, so listen, let's just go over the results of Norseman, just so we've said them out loud. The top women were Kristin Lai from Norway, 11:50. Lena Foss in 11:53. So, man, imagine racing head to head like that for nearly 12 hours.
Oh my
And then
word.
Lena Marie Langseth in 12 hours 13 took third place. And the men, as you said, Alan Hovde from Norway in 9:43, Lars Petter Stormo in 9:49, Lars Christian Vold in 9:54. So again, it's pretty close
Yeah.
racing at the front, that isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd be able to see people when there's only 4 or 5 minutes between you and a steep
How
mountain.
agonising would that be on that mountain, knowing
Oh,
that they're
trying to
just
trying to
just
push
ahead?
yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, and then good old Graham Stewart in fourth in 10:04. So good stuff. Right, Helen, tell us about 70.3 Durban.
Yeah, well, this one, it was the inaugural event in Durban, the inaugural 70.3, and the women's race was won by Paris Edwards. Now, we've mentioned Paris a lot this year. She's a British athlete, and she has just had such a good year. She got loads of podiums, didn't she, out in Asia
Yeah.
around sort of February, March kind of time. And yeah, she did it in 4:28:41. She pulled away on the run. She got the fastest run there out of the female pro. She did a 1:25 because I think she was quite head to head with Andrea Steyn of South Africa, who got second. But yeah, pulled away from her on the run. And then Lucy Reed from the Czech Republic finished in 4:38 in third. It was the South African men went for it full time, big time in the men's race. Stuart Marais, how do you say his name, Rob? Marais? He won.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, in pretty much 4 hours straight, and he did a 1:18 run. So next after him was 4:10. So yeah, he had a nice, comfortable
A
win there.
nice cushion
But
there.
it bodes well, I think, for Paris Edwards if she's going to be doing the 70.3 World Championships, doesn't it? She's had a lot of
Certainly
good
does, yeah.
results. I get the impression that she is very, very good in the heat, and she's one heck of a good climber on the bike. And obviously, she can run off the bike too, so definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just noticed it was Ironman Maastricht this weekend, which is a brand new one that people are talking about being a sneaky route into Kona, the boys were saying at the club. Baz Diederden took that out in 8:27, so not a particularly fast course. And on the women's side, it was taken out by Yvonne van Vlerken.
Yeah, apparently he had a bike
So,
crash halfway round, but still
really?
but still managed to get the win. And imagine for her, how good would that have been? Because it's a home event and everything like that, so it must have been
Yeah.
a pretty good atmosphere for her. And she's not going to be racing Kona this year.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Good knowledge.
yeah.
Why is that then?
I think according to her, social media thing, I think she's just said that she wants to be able to go there and actually be in a situation where she can get on the podium. And she knows she
Right.
can, but actually at this precise point this year, she's not in a situation to be able to do that. So yeah, although she has qualified, she's got enough points. Yep, she's not going to go.
That is interesting because that's a pretty smart move on her part, isn't it?
Mm.
Rather than going to Kona and finishing 14th and getting nothing and it costing her £3,000, she's gonna go and race somewhere else. I wonder whether she'll go to what's the one that's right after Hawaii? Is it Florida?
There's,
She's got a history of racing fast there, hasn't she, at Florida
mm.
or Arizona, and turn up fresh and scoop up some points for next season.
Yeah.
So or scoop up some prize money because she's got to pay the bills, hasn't she?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah, cool. And now then, one for our elites,
Yes. Oh,
the Rio Test event.
yeah. It was sort of, it's been branded as, the Rio Test event and the grand final in Chicago this year are the key events for the British athletes. So in the women's race, there were basically the whole of the ITU. They were all there, and it sounded really quite exciting on the women's race because you had a couple of Aussies pulling out. You had, I think, Andrea Hewitt from New Zealand, She pulled out as well, kind of midway through the race, or didn't finish. But up front, Gwen Jorgensen won. But then we also had non-Stanford and Vicky Holland got on the podium, which is brilliant. So Stanford came in second place, and Holland was third, which means that they're halfway to securing their place at the Rio Olympics, essentially. So any British athlete who finishes on the podium at that Rio event and then at Chicago is automatically pre-selected for the Olympic Games team.
What do you think their chances are?
So I think
podium at both. It's pretty steep qualification standards, that, isn't it?
Really.
I read a thing by Will Clark this morning that said, essentially how incredibly difficult it was to get pre-selected, but they've probably done that for a reason, haven't they?
Yeah.
If one of those two can get themselves on the podium again, then good on you. And it does open up this interesting area now, doesn't it? Where if these two are good enough to get on the podium at the test event, are the British triathlon people going to have to rethink their idea of, the kind of targeted support role? Because if both girls can get on the podium, both girls could race for a medal, couldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. But then what do you do with that third place? Do you go with Jodie Stimpson, who would be Commonwealth champion? Do you go with former world champion Helen Jenkins, who Helen Jenkins withdrew during the swim yesterday?
She got kicked in the face, I think, didn't she?
So really, really unfortunate for her. And then Jodie Stimpson was 10th. And it's really interesting because all four of those girls we've just mentioned, they've all had really horrible injuries, which has sort of kept them out for practically whole seasons. So it just seems that non-Stanford and Vicky Holland are coming back just at the right time. And what's going to happen with Jodie, who had obviously a stellar season last year, but this year compared to last year has been probably for her really, really frustrating. So it's going to be very, very interesting. So we await to see what happens in Chicago. And then in the men's race, Alistair Brownlee could only finish 10th. And Johnny Brownlee is injured, so he wasn't competing in Rio. So that obviously straight away, they will not be automatically pre-selected because they haven't met the criteria.
It's interesting as to whether, the Slow Twitch report is saying, obviously we couldn't watch it because it wasn't on the telly, which is a bit sad.
No live coverage at all.
But they were saying, Brownlee seemed to struggle in the heat, so whether they're just writing that or whether he really did. He finished in, let's see here, 1:49.54, and Gomez was 1:48.26, so he's lost a minute 30 there to Gomez, hasn't he, over 10k, which is really unusual. It was like Rich Murray from South Africa had an amazing run and ran right the way through the packs. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes with, Brownlee's had this history of sometimes racing really well in the heat, like out in where was it when they did the big Dubai, was it?
Yep.
But then he didn't really run hard there, did they? Him and Johnny sort of ran together. So I think it's fair to say there's question marks over his ability to run in the heat. Do you think that's fair to say, or am I being harsh? He's collapsed in the heat at London, hasn't he?
That would have been from overexertion, I think. I don't think that would have just been the heat. I think he would probably...
Well, it was a very hot day that day when he collapsed. It was over 30 degrees. Do you remember when he had that wobble going down the finishing chute a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
So, who knows? Who knows? The big question was, have you seen all those hideous photos of the water at Rio?
Hey, how different is it to Salford Keys?
Well...
there have been questions about the water quality for a while for the triathletes, the rowers, the sailors. Alistair Brownlee didn't seem...
They've got to clean it up, haven't they? They've got to clean the water up.
But they will. It's one of those things. They're not going to.
The Olympics have got enough money behind them to build them a couple of UV treatment plants, haven't they? Yeah. We don't want the brown trout floating in the race water.
No, what Brownlee said was, actually, during a race, it's not a problem. If you're swimming in fairly horrible water, you just get on with it, and it's not going to affect you. It's not going to affect your race, because clearly
it's what happens afterwards, isn't it?
So it would be
and
more.
If you train in the water in the run up to the
events,
events,
it's more if you'd have to avoid training in it. and just keep very, very clean and be very careful in the run up to it. But if it's pretty skanky when you're in it, not much you can do about it, and you're not suddenly going to puke within 5 minutes of it, are you? Because it's got to get into your system.
Yeah.
So you might spend the 24 hours after winning gold on the toilet or something, but
Nice. Thanks for that health. Oh man, right. Let's look at races coming up. This coming weekend we have the Brat Triathlon. Is that Birmingham or Bristol? It's Birmingham,
it's
Birmingham,
isn't it? Yep, Birmingham. They're doing their sprint and standard triathlon. So it takes place in Warwickshire at the West Midlands Water Ski Centre on Sunday. So they've got a whole load of races, and it's a very popular one, isn't it? So they do standard and lots of different waves and starts. So I've heard good things about that, about warm welcomes and like really, really good marshals, and that it's just a really top event, basically.
Cool. So if you're racing there, let us know. It's also the London Triathlon, and it's also Dublin 70.3. And I know there's quite a lot of the guys are going over to Dublin to race the 70.3 over there. I remember Fraser Cartmel saying he was going over to do it, so he's got to be one of the favourites for the win there.
Yeah, Nikki Bartlett's going over there as well.
Jolly good. Chris Standage is going over there, who we interviewed, who was the overall age group winner at Staffordshire 70.3. So he's already qualified for the World Championship 70.3, but he's looking to scoop up even more points. What a great thing for him that would be if he could win first age group overall at Dublin as well.
Oh, that would be it'd be massive confidence booster, wouldn't it? Really, really big.
Be.
And I think it'll be the first time that a 70.3 has been held in Dublin, and you can just imagine, can't you? The atmosphere will be great, and there'll be everyone there cheering people on with a bit of Irish.
A bit of Irish hospitality.
Exactly, that's the word, hospitality. Thank you very much, Rob.
All right, now then. Moving on to our next section, I've got a coach's couch submission this week from a guy called Rob Moore, who's written, Hi Rob, I was wondering if you've got any advice for training for a sea swim. I'm signed up for Challenge UK in September, and I'd love to have a go along sea swim, but I just live miles and miles from the beach. I live in London. So are there any locations you recommend, or should I opt for a sea swim event that will have safety events in place? So I know you've got a lot of experience swimming in the sea, haven't you, Hells?
No, I don't. No, my sea swimming extends to absolutely being petrified the first time I did Sandman, which has a sea swim off Anglesey. And I think I did breaststroke for most of it because the weather was so horrendous. And then by contrast, last October in Challenge Peguera, that was a sea swim. And it had been so stormy and just really massive waves in the days leading up to it. And I was thinking, oh, that swim's going to be horrific. The race day, it was flat as a pancake. It was absolutely beautiful. So they're my only two. And the second one, so Peguera, suddenly I just realised about halfway, oh my goodness, this is very deep.
Yeah.
So tips on avoiding a panic as well, I'd say.
That's exactly it. I think the first thing you've got to think about when you're going out for a sea swim is you might get a lucky day and it might be calm, but that's pretty unlikely, especially in Weymouth. So it's great to be able to go to your local lake and do some swimming there to get some open water practice. I think that in itself helps you deal with the sort of, I think our brain, there's a little lizard brain inside there somewhere, isn't there? And it freaks out every now and again if you're not used to it. Yeah. And it wonders what that shadow is, and it wonders how deep it is, and it wonders, is there something going to come and bite my toes? And I think you need a certain number of swims just in open water to kind of get your head around that and realise, you know what, I'm really floaty in a wetsuit. Things are really good here, and the worst that happens is turn on my back for a bit, chill out, do a bit of breaststroke, and that staying calm mentally thing you can deal with swimming in your local lake or in your Salford Keys or wherever. Now, the thing where going to the sea and having a swim there is really going to pay dividends is if there's any kind of chop or wind blowing on the day. Now, it doesn't take very much wind at all, or what can look like hardly any chop when you're standing there, to realise that you're going to get a face full of water when you're swimming in the sea swim. So, yes, my advice to you, Rob, is get yourself down to the sea and have a swim there. If you can do an event that's got lifeguarding in place, that's going to help you feel a lot more confident. But I think it can do a lot just getting yourself to the seaside, getting your wetsuit on, and just practice swimming out 20 to 40 meters. If there's, little bits of waves breaking and stuff, go out through them, swim out through the waves, practice doing that, come back in, go back out, come back in. You can even do this when you're on holiday with a family, and it doesn't have to be like a swimming session as such. It's just practice at floating around in the waves and learning that what makes you panic first off, after you've been in a few times in it, you actually can sort of relax a little bit really. And there's techniques you can learn, and you can look them up on YouTube about taking a deep breath and suck, tuck and duck, they talk about, don't they, to go into any break in white water, so you go underneath it. You can learn all of that stuff from watching online, but the most important thing is to get your head in the game and think, all right, I'm going to chill out here. Now, a couple of caveats. I would try and always swim at a place in the seaside. If you are just rocking up, go to a place where there's lifeguard cover, even if you're a confident swimmer. Ask the lifeguard before you go in. Ask them if there are any rips. Ask if there's anything you need to be aware of, because that's just good common sense, isn't it? Let them know you're going in for a swim. And if you are going to do a bit of a sea training swim, my advice is always to just go out beyond the breaking surf, if there is any there, and swim backwards and forwards along the shore, so you're never more than probably 30 to 50 meters out from the shore, and you can get back in relatively quickly. If you can have a friend to swim, to swim with you as well, have like a swim buddy, that's a real good idea, that you can swim together up and down, and if anybody gets into any difficulty, you've got somebody swimming there with you.
Can I bring in a tip here, Rob, as well?
Go for it, love it.
Well, if you've got a weekend available between now and Weymouth, why don't you get in touch with some of the local tri clubs down on the south coast and see, do they have any sea swim sessions?
Absolutely, great idea.
It helps, and it might be that they say, yep, we've got a training session this Saturday, or no, however, I'm free, I can come with you, and this is where I usually, train or swim, or here's good, here's not, blah, blah, blah. I did that ahead of 70.3 Wimbledon last year, and a guy from a local tri club recce'd the bike course with me. So, just do a bit of Googling. Brilliant. And find out if
it's
there are
social
any.
Media these days are so useful, isn't it? Use Twitter and the Facebook groups, and I bet you'll be overrun with people saying, yeah, I'm doing it as well, I'll come down and have a swim with you. If people are, there's probably 1,000 people or more entered into Challenge Weymouth, there's got to be somebody who fancies a swim on the same day as you. So get together, form a little group, make some friends, and go for a swim. Listen, there's one more thing I want to mention. There's some guys that I met when I was at the Tri Expo, really nice dudes who live up in Coniston and organise the Coniston Big Chill Swim, and they've invented these inflatable open water swim buoys. Have you seen these?
Are they the things that you swim with because then you can always be visible? No.
Yeah, it's like an inflatable orange, like a slightly bigger than a rugby ball sized thing, yeah. Like a little flotation aid that's got a strap on it, and then that strap goes around your shoulder, and you just tow it behind you, and you can't even feel it. But again, it just gives you that little bit of extra. Firstly, people can see you because you've got an orange buoy behind, which to anybody in a boat or a jet ski means there's a swimmer or a diver underneath, so they're going to take care of you. And also, if you do get into trouble, you've got something to hang on to as a flotation device. So you can go and check those guys out. I think it's Chill Swim, and I can't remember for the life of me what the actual flotation aids are called, but I've seen them all over the place for sale now. So maybe think about getting yourself one of those as well.
Definitely, it's a really good idea, and just to be seen, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Hells, that's coming to the end of everything I've got this week.
Yeah, I think I'm out as well. I need to psych myself up for a bike ride.
Good for you, mate. I need to do some work, and then I'm going out for one as well.
Enjoy. Well, you've been listening to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. You can always email us at Coach Rob Wilby at oxygenaddict.com. So if you've got any questions or anything, we're on Twitter as well at Cup of Tri.
Caroline Livesey, welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Have you been out training hard today?
I had a training session this morning, and I've been at work all day, so just yeah, just relaxing after a long day now. I didn't train this evening. I've got a bit of tapering for the weekend, so
And this is one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on because you race pro, but you still work full time, which is just mind blowing to I think a lot of people who are listening. Now, we've had you on, obviously, the thing that you're most known for at the minute, the red hot topic is having finished second recently at Ironman UK in Bolton in the professional category. And I don't think there'd be many listeners out there who thought that you would be working a full-time job as well as doing that. So, I mean, talk us through that to start with, because people listening are mostly age groupers, and they're going to be able to get loads from listening to your story of how you fit your training in around your work and what kind of training you actually do.
yeah. Well, first of all, it's hard work.
I bet
You
it
know,
is.
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who's not fully committed. But then I kind of also think there's a lot of age groupers out there who work full time and train full time, and not necessarily maybe the volume that I do because maybe they're not training for Ironman, um, but there are a lot of people who are training before they get to work and training, after they get home at night, and I think it's just a case of being organized and having a job which allows you to get into a routine. And that's, I think, the thing that has really changed for me in the last 2 years, is that I now have a job where I can really train very similar sessions each week, without too much disruption, and that allows me to build, build my training up and make the progress that I have.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's a great tip there right from the off is basically do you try and do the same training on a Tuesday each week kind of thing, for example?
Yeah, I do blocks of sort of 4 weeks, and in my three sort of two build weeks and an overload week and then a recovery week. And in my sort of 3 weeks training hard, I try to do the same, not exactly the same sessions, but the same type of session on the same day each week. And just being in that routine, for me, really works.
Yeah, sure. Now talk us through a little bit about your training if you don't mind. How many times a week do you swim, bike, and run each, and what's your overall sort of volume?
Um, so on big weeks, I guess I'm doing between 20 and 25 hours. It the training varies throughout the year. So in the winter, I tend to do more gym work than I do during race season. And
Sure.
but I mean, ultimately, I sort of swim 5 times a week. I do three big brick sessions a week. I do a hard turbo and a hard run sort of interval sessions, and everything else around that is what we call stocking fillers.
Nice.
So.
And your job that you fit all this around, how long are you at work for, and what kind of job do you do in the real world, as it were?
So I'm a geotechnical engineer, sort of a civil engineer by qualification, and I work between sort of 38 and 45 hours a week, depending on how busy we are at work. So I mean, it's generally 9 to 5 or 6, so it's not too bad, and they're really great. My work are pretty flexible. With I'm pretty much my own boss in terms of my workload and when I get things done. And if things, if there's a demanding week, then I'm there a lot more, and if it's not, then I can get out and train more. So that works. The only problem is I usually get my busiest weeks on the weeks where I want to train hard.
Yeah, that always happened
So,
to me as well. It's so frustrating, isn't it?
yeah, but no,
So, I mean,
they're really great.
you're
I think.
fitting your training in around a proper full-time job, like 38 to 45 hours, plus you're fitting in, between 15 and 25 hours of training every single week, week in and week out. So you must be super, super organized and super dedicated to it, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I'm dedicated to both. I love my job. I'm very lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
But I also really love training and really love triathlon. And I think, I love racing. And we spoke about this a bit at Ironman UK. Just racing a lot works for me, and I enjoy the whole experience. So I don't see it as a chore, and I think that's probably why I'm able to continue with both and hopefully do well at both. Um,
Yeah, that really came across when we were talking, the sort of passion you've got for doing it. Um, that's obviously a massive bonus for you at the moment, isn't it? But there's no taking away from it. You've got to do those big weeks, week in and week out, and you've been doing it. So, how many years would you say that's been your routine for to get you to the standard that you're at now?
um, I I mean, goodness, I've been doing triathlon a long time.
It's a
Um,
loaded question, really, because I've got your race results in front of me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've been our first Ironman was in 2010. But I didn't really step it up until this year. And I mean, last year I definitely stepped up a level from where I was previously. Um, so the sort of training consistency, like I said, has been in the last couple of years, and that's because I left the army. And I was previously in the army for 10 years, and really the lifestyle in the army is just not conducive to having a sort of routine.
Yeah, sure.
And my training was broken up by, tours in Afghanistan and being sent away on long exercises and getting no training in, and those sorts of things where you just don't get consistent year on year building of fitness and building of strength, which you need to succeed in Ironman anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, what I'm going to do, if it's all right with you, a little bit of flattery here for you and for the listeners who haven't heard your results. So this year, 2015, you've had second place Ironman UK, third place at Ironman Lanzarote, and 12th place Ironman South Africa. 2014, when you were racing as an age grouper, you had first in age group at Ironman Texas and Ironman Austria, and at the British Middle Distance Championships. You were third in your age group at Kona and 38th overall, and you won your age group in the All World Athlete Series in 2014. So that was a pretty stellar year, wasn't it? 2014. You must have been happy with that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it was a bit mad really, and we started off the year. I'd actually had about 18 months totally not doing any training whatsoever because I was leaving the army, changing career, that sort of thing, and there wasn't room in my life for it, so I had to have a sort of
Yeah,
enforced
sure.
rest period. So I came back to triathlon last year, not really knowing what it was going to hold. And Mark and I had the intention of going to Kona, so we booked to do Austria and Texas just to give ourselves a sort of backup plan because we both wanted to race Kona and we decided that we weren't going to go unless we both qualified. So we both did Texas and luckily both qualified. And then Austria was just a sort of fun, I guess, race that we already had booked.
The Livesey's idea of a couple's day out. Go and race Ironman Austria.
um,
Good for
but
you.
but you know what? It was a really good thing that we did that because we'd both had sort of, although we'd won our age groups in Texas, we'd both had fairly mediocre races there, and we totally experimented with Austria and did a very different taper, and actually that's precisely what I've stuck to ever since. And if I hadn't had that chance, I don't know if I'd have had the confidence to experiment like that. So it was good.
Interesting. Do you mind us asking what was different in the taper that worked better for you?
Well, and I think this is very athlete specific, but Mark and I both respond to a higher volume taper. And for Texas, we just did too little. And I think that's uh,
Yeah,
probably a failing a lot of people make because that's what you want to do. And building up to an Ironman, you're so sort of apprehensive about the whole experience. You tend to, do very little in the 1 maybe 2 weeks in the lead up to it. And actually, for us, that's not how we best respond. So yeah.
so you ended up doing a lot more in the 2 weeks before the race. And what would your weekend before Ironman Austria look like then? what kind of sessions did you do on the bike in terms of length of run and things like that?
So generally now, the week before an Ironman, whereas previously I'd probably do maybe, I don't know, 5 hours training or something. Now it's about 12. So
Really, as much as that? You'll do 12 hours in the week leading up to it.
yeah, 8 to 12, yeah. And a lot of it's swimming. We stay high volume on the swimming side of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, lots of just not long riding, an hour and a half. The weekend before, I maybe do 2 hours and a brick session with, a bit of um, interval running off it. We sort of keep the intensity quite high on the running. So yeah, that sort of thing.
Nice. Nice stuff. That's great. That's very interesting, actually. And it'd be breaking a lot of hearts listening that your idea of a low volume taper is 12 hours of training. That'd be more than a lot of people are putting in their peak week, but that's what you got to do to be the best in the world, I suppose, isn't it? Right. So look, let's talk
I'm not sure I'm
about.
quite at that level.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate, if you keep on the results keep headed this way, then it won't be long. Let's talk about your 2015 season so far. You had a 12th at Ironman South Africa. First race as a pro, that was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And then a couple of months later, Ironman Lanzarote, third overall, and then a few months later, second overall, Ironman UK. So it's looking good for Kona. I like the
Yeah,
trend.
yeah. Yeah, I'm going to win Kona. No, it's a bit strange because at the start of the year, I didn't really have going to Kona as a goal at all. Mark and I had sort of discussed it and said, we'll just see how it goes, but it's pretty unlikely. The points you need now to qualify as a female pro to get to Kona are just insane. You've
Yeah,
got to,
it's a lot of
you've got
racing,
to
isn't it?
be, yeah, upwards of 4,500. So, um, yeah, it's a lot of racing and it's a lot of good results. And after getting 12th in South Africa, I thought that was pretty much a write-off. And I didn't have the best race in South Africa. Looking back now, I was very much phased by stepping up to being a pro, and such a different race dynamic. And even having had good results as an age group of the year before, I think I just wasn't mentally prepared for that change, that sort of difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, but then obviously things improved from there. So I've had a couple of quite surprising for me anyway, results in Lanzarote and UK, and that's put me within sort of touching distance of getting a slot now for Kona. So that's why I'm heading out to Wiesbaden this weekend.
Good. And what kind of results you need in Wiesbaden then? Did you tell me you needed seventh or better to get enough points to where you think
Yeah,
you
I
need to be
think
to qualify? Is it somewhere around there?
yeah, it's somewhere around there. I mean, and it's a long shot, because it's the European Championships and it's a 70.3, which I'm not as fast as I'd like to be over that distance. I certainly haven't run as well half marathon as I could do so far. So yeah, we'll see. It's a long shot, but it's definitely worth a try. And you don't know until you give it a go. And pretty much anything can happen on a race day. So I'll just go out there with the intention of having a solid race and see where that leaves me.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you mind if I ask a little bit about Ironman Lanzarote?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, stepping up to race pro is one thing, and finishing 12th is a really solid result. And I think a lot of people who are in that kind of top few in their age group, and I don't care what sort of age group they're in, everybody harbours that sort of maybe I could race pro because I'm finishing in the top 3 or 4 in my age group. You're one of the ones who, you had the courage, and fair play to you, to actually step up and go, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to go and race pro. And 12th, as you said, probably wasn't quite the result you were hoping for, but a third in Lanzarote absolutely puts you on the map as a pro triathlete, because that's a really big European race that's got big heritage, and obviously there's a whole training scene out to Lanzarote. So you're essentially set for life, I think, in the Ironman training and coaching scene through that result. How did it play out for you on race day? Talk us through there, because I know it's an awesome event, that one.
Yeah, it is. Do you know the build up to Lanzarote could not have been any worse for me? And it's a really interesting sort of study in psychology, this one. But Mark and I had a bit of a nightmare because our our journey out there wasn't without incident, shall we say. Um, and it was
What
a
happened?
very
Come on.
very stressful. I'm not sure I should admit this, but basically I booked flights to the wrong place.
Oh no, what, wrong island?
Yeah, no, wrong place altogether. It was
Where had you booked to, Caroline?
I can admit this because it's on my blog, I think, anyway. But um, I had, for some reason, in my head, I had Alicante as being the name of the airport in Lanzarote.
Oh, breaks your heart.
So yeah, so we didn't have the best journey out there, shall we say? Um,
So how long before, like, did you get to the airport before you realised your flights were to the wrong place?
I tell you what, Rob, we'll leave that one there, and I'll let you ask Mark that question when you can.
Oh man, there's some good stuff coming in the next interview. All right, go on. So you've had a slightly stressful journey to Lanzarote
Yeah,
as it is.
yeah, and then Mark and I had both been to Lanzarote previously in, I think, 2005. And, people always say Lanzarote is really windy. And I think when we'd been out there training, it hadn't been as windy as it can be. And it
Right.
just took us totally by surprise. The few days leading up to the race were absolutely gale force winds. We were going out on our bikes just thinking that we weren't going to get around the bike route because it was, sort of life-threatening winds.
When it
Um,
blows out there, it's absolutely mental, isn't it? And
yeah,
they had
yeah.
some of their worst windy conditions this year. That we did a camp out in Fuerteventura just before Ironman Lanzarote, and we had the same thing there. It was just nuclear all the time.
Yeah, so that, yes, so basically that took us by surprise. We felt, extremely apprehensive going into the race. And to be honest, on race morning, even, I remember sitting with Mark outside the cafe just sort of by the beach and feeling really sleepy,
Right.
which is so not like me at all on race morning. Normally I'm sort of bouncing off the walls. Um, But the race just came together for me, and my body responded really well to the bike course. And I think that's just because the conditions that we train in at home are, generally quite windy and very, very hilly. And I had conversations with various people leading up to the race about a strategy for the bike course, and you you basically have on Lanzarote, you basically have to lay it all out in the first half of the bike because once you summit the last climb, it's downhill home, and you sort of lose the ability then to really kick. So I just sort of did my best on the first half, and was motivated by the fact that I was just passing another female pro every 10 or 20 kilometers, and um, every time I passed someone, it made me sort of more determined. And
Awesome.
yeah, and
What position were you out of the water? Where did you come out of the water?
I must have been about 10th, I think, out of the water. So I
So
had quite,
solid start to the day, and then you were hunting people down on the run the whole way, on the bike the whole way, which is great for your confidence, right?
absolutely, yeah. And then, um, and I think as well, I'd never pegged myself as being up there, as being a contender. And so when I was passing people who were contenders on the bike, I thought, right, okay, well, it's game on here. And coming off onto the run in third, even then, I thought I would get caught on the run because historically I've not, been as strong as some of the girls are on the run. Um, but I think the bike kind of broke people um, because it was so windy and so it was hot, and it's hilly. Um, and so yeah, I ran actually pretty well for me, and it was enough to hold on to third just from Shaoli, who's the Taiwanese athlete who was running me down on the marathon.
Awesome. And so first big podium, that must have been a wonderful, wonderful feeling, right?
Oh God, yeah, it was. No, I was absolutely blown away by it. I mean, it was the most incredible feeling to podium. in an Ironman, and especially when it was, like I said, a real surprise to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a pattern developing here of races where the weather's terrible and the
Yeah.
conditions are really difficult and it breaks people because Ironman UK this year was the most ridiculous monsoon type rain for the first probably 2 hours of the day from during the swim all the way through the first hour and a half of the bike. It was beastly, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it couldn't have been any worse.
Freezing cold, driving rain. I know loads of people I spoke to said, "Oh, if I could have got off and gone in a cafe, I would have done." And then again, you rode on through there, and did you come off the bike in second place there as well?
Yes, I
You were
did.
already
Yeah,
in second off the bike, yeah, and
yeah.
you had
So,
quite a big lead, didn't you, over third?
yeah, it was about 6 minutes in T2.
Fantastic. So
Um,
talk us through what was going through your head at that point then.
um, well, I knew Ellie was behind me, and Ellie and I have raced each other quite a few times now. Um, and I knew that our runs were roughly more or less the same. Um, so a 6 minute lead, I felt fairly confident going out onto the run. I saw Ellie going into T2 on the bike as I was running out. So I knew it was her, and but I also knew that with her or behind her would be some of the faster runners like Alice Hector. And nothing's ever. I definitely wasn't taking it for granted. But yeah, I just wanted to have a really solid first half marathon and put some more time between myself and the rest of the field if I could. I knew Lucy Gossage was way up the road and wasn't really in my race anyway. She was in her own little
She
league
had a
there.
phenomenal race that day, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. I mean, she came ninth overall. Lucy was absolutely on fire. Um, so I was just worried about what was happening behind me, and the next time I got a split, luckily the gap had opened a bit more to those behind me, and I grew in confidence from that. But I also just felt really good, and I think that was partly because of the support on the run route, which really lifts you in Bolton.
Yeah, the support was great that day, but I think most importantly, you looked really in control. You looked totally in the zone. You were really hard to distract, and we kept shouting at you and stuff. But whereas where loads of people would look over and smile and stuff, you were focused totally on the road in front of you. And we maybe got a little smile out of you at one point, but the rest of it was just you didn't look like your run form broke down at all the whole way down the marathon, which is really unusual at Bolton, where it's all either uphill or downhill, and it's really punishing on the quads uphill, and then even more punishing on the quads on the way down the hill. You didn't look relaxed. You looked like you were running really well, but you looked totally in control. Now,
Oh, well, that's kind. Thank you.
might not felt that way to you, but it looked really really smooth.
Funnily enough, it did actually feel really good, and I think that was my 10th Ironman distance race, and I have had some shockers. Kona last year, I felt absolutely dreadful on the second half of the run, but Bolton was one of the best sort of marathons I've had where in terms of how I felt physically. Um, so it just all came together. I had a really solid race there, and I was really really pleased with how I felt on the run. So.
Great stuff. Right now, I want to ask you about Ironman for the Kids. I read a little bit about this on your blog. It's a charity based in South Africa around Ironman South Africa, isn't it? Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so Ironman for the Kids are quite a small charity which started from a couple of guys out in South Africa who did the first Ironman in Port Elizabeth and wanted to raise some money for local causes. And it really just grew from there. They raised a few thousand rand the first year, and now, I mean, this year they raised over 2 million rand. They have
Wow.
Yeah, they have athlete slots for all the South African 70.3 and Ironman races, and they get each of the athletes to raise money to race. And the thing there's a lot of things I love about the charity, but one of the main things is that they all do it voluntarily. There's all of the money that people raise and donate goes directly to their beneficiaries. There's very very little administration. They have a really great rapport with the kids' homes, and the shelters that they support. And I went to visit one of the kids' homes while I was out in South Africa this year for the race, and the kids were just amazing. They're really, have been given an opportunity to have a childhood that they wouldn't have otherwise had in a country where I think the welfare system is quite poor in terms of supporting, poor and disadvantaged and abandoned children. So they'd otherwise be on the streets, and I think it's just a lovely thing to be able to help, those children to actually to have a childhood and have an opportunity in the future. And I
Oh,
also think
wonderful.
that going out racing, you turn up in a country which has some extremely poor areas like South Africa, and you've got a bike that's worth, more than those people will see in a lifetime. And it just felt wrong to me. I wanted to be able to give something back rather than just going out there and sort of taking and being this professional athlete with this flashy bike and ignoring all of the sort of poverty around me. So that's why I got involved.
Oh, good for you. And is it the kind of thing where athletes from the UK could go over to South Africa and race for this charity?
Absolutely. The athlete slots are available to anybody, and Ironman for the Kids and I have now got a sort of great relationship. I'm continuing to hopefully raise awareness and gain support for them. And Mark, my husband, is also raising money through his events, and we're going to do a big raffle at the Rubicon Triathlon, and hopefully people will donate and feel that they can support the charity through that event as well. So we're hoping that we'll raise quite a lot of money on that weekend for Ironman for the Kids as well.
Fantastic. So if there's anybody listening who's thinking about entering Ironman South Africa next year, get your slot through them and raise some money for them. It sounds like a wonderful charity. That's awesome, Caroline.
Cheers, yeah.
Right, tell us a little bit. You talked then about racing as a pro and all the sponsorship and stuff. Who are some of the guys who have helped you out on your path to go from being an age grouper to being a professional? Who are some of your sponsors?
So who wetsuits with Dino. He is a long-standing friend of Mark and mine. So really, Dino's been involved from the start, and we continue to do a lot of work with Hoop. He's brilliant. I've got Protocol, who they are a nutrition. They do nutrition and health and beauty products, but I'm mainly sponsored by the nutrition. I don't think they want my face in the health and beauty products. But actually,
it's meant to be Mark saying that. You can't do yourself abuse, Caroline. So tell us about the products then. What kind of stuff do they can help athletes out?
So I was going to say, Protocol, actually, their products have probably been one of the things that have been instrumental in enabling me to sort of train and work the hours that I do, because just the immune support that I get from their products, I can absolutely swear by. I get a lot of, or I used to get a lot of IBS and GI issues, and racing was a nightmare for me. But since I've started with Protocol products, I've honestly had no problems at all. And I wouldn't sort of try and just sell a product that I don't believe in. And I really believe it's mainly the colostrum and the green magic, which are the two things that I think have just absolutely turned it around for me.
So is the green magic is it like a vitamin type product that's got the vitamins in that you'd get traditionally from vegetables? Is that the kind of deal?
Yeah, so it's a powdered green, so it's 15 superfoods. It's got probiotics, and then all of your antioxidants, and it's basically like 1 teaspoon is like your 5 a day in terms of its antioxidants properties. And I have at least 2 teaspoons a day, and even though I eat loads and loads of fruit and veg, and if anyone's sort of following my food blog on my website, they'll see I really do. But I think when you're training this hard, you need a lot more than 5 a day, and you don't necessarily get this sort of antioxidants you think you're getting from your fruit and veg, just because of the way they're packaged and travel and the way they're produced nowadays. So yeah, I think Green Magic gives you that extra support.
Yeah, there is no question. I think that when you're training for Ironman and putting in those volumes of training, your body just needs every little bit of help it can get, can't it? So
Yeah.
it's always good to hear about products that are actually rated by top athletes that use them and have really felt a benefit rather than, being paid by them to say nice stuff about them. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I've had similar issues myself in the past, so I might go and check that out actually and
Yeah.
give that a go. Thanks for the
And I
tip,
can't,
man.
yeah, no, and I can't not mention Specialized Harrogate, who've just been absolutely fantastic with my Shiv, which I love. So I get a lot of
Oh,
support
what a
from them.
great bike they are. Helen gives me a load of crap about this because I am a bike junkie. I think the Shiv is a fantastic machine. Um, how long have you been riding it for now?
This is my second year on it, so I did all of last year on it, and it's the same bike, and yeah, I absolutely love it. So yeah,
So you could say that since you moved on to the Shiv, you've gone to winning your age group and turning pro. The Shiv, you
yeah,
got
it's
the
all about
Shiv
the
to
Shiv.
thank for it. It's all about the Shiv and the vitamin
Yeah,
tablet.
yeah,
Oh, great stuff. Now listen, one final thing before we finish the interview, because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you do some coaching and you and your husband organise some events as well. So let's give you a little plug for that.
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I do a bit coaching. Um, so Mark's software is called Exhale. It's trainexhale.com, and it's amazing. I mean, he started off just he got fed up with using Excel spreadsheets and wanted to develop something that worked for him as a coach. And really, it's grown from there. And the tool now, it just makes coaching so easy. I mean, not that coaching is easy, but the sort of process is a lot easier now. So I can actually fit my coaching around my work and my training as well. So yeah, I've got a few athletes on my books, just to keep me busy, really.
And where do people get in contact with you if they like what they hear on here and they want to be coached by you? Where do they get in contact?
Well, my website is carolinelivesey.co.uk, and there's an email address on there, so people can just email me. I'm pretty, um, you know, open to communication, but yeah, I don't have masses of room for taking on new athletes at the moment. But certainly Mark's always looking for people to take on. Although again, he's pretty busy, but you know, always get in touch if anyone's got questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. Um,
Great stuff. It's brilliant to have pros who are so accessible, Caroline. And the last thing, tell us a little bit about the Rubicon, which is coming up in a few weeks' time, isn't it?
yeah, the Rubicon is going to be absolutely immense this year. We've got a fantastic field of athletes racing, um, from Joe Skipper in the men's race, and we've got Amy Forshaw, who's last year's winner in the women's race. We've just got a really stellar field of girls racing this year as well. So it's going to be a really exciting day. I get to just watch. So I'll be there at 3 in the morning doing registration, and then hoping to catch some of the swim before the girls and guys get out on the bike. But no, it's a great fun weekend. It's on the bank holiday at the end of August. Um, Mark has a real desire to set up an event where things are not just, so we call it the Ryanair effect, where things are not just added on, and people are charged, for this, that, and the other. It's pay your entry fee and you get free camping. You get a free entry to the house and gardens where the event's held, which is really beautiful. And people can come along for the weekend with their kids. The kids have got a race on the Saturday as well, so it should be a really good weekend for everybody. We've got a number of clubs coming down this year, is sort of bringing 60 athletes and just bringing all their families, and everyone's racing at something, because the Rubicon is the half, but they've also got the Trident, which is a standard distance one, and the kids race on the Saturday as well.
Brilliant. So it sounds like you're going to have a whole kind of triathlon festival feel to it. Loads of clubs turning up for an end of summer bank holiday barbecue type race as well.
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah, it should
brilliant.
be brilliant. Yeah.
Sounds really, really good. Hey, well, listen, I know you're extremely busy and you got loads of stuff to do, so we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us on here. Um, will you come back on the show in the future and tell us about how everything's gone?
Yeah, absolutely. It's no problem. It's been really nice to chat to you. So yeah, we'll see what happens. If I don't qualify for Kona this year, then I'll definitely be fitting in another Ironman before the end of the year. So we'll just have to see where that goes.
Great stuff. So listen, thanks ever so much for being on the show, Caroline Livesey. You've been listening to the Cup of Triathlon podcast with Coach Rob Wilby and Helen Murray. Our sponsors are oxygenaddict.com and fueledbycake.com. And until next week, have a great training and racing week. Thanks very much, everybody.